And do you want to hear something that's really sick? All right, are you ready for this? Subconsciously, I almost wishfully hope that somebody I know has more issues in their family household or had more challenges. Or I almost secretly wish and hope that somebody had more problems and more obstacles, because then it makes it feel like they're not as much better than me. And what's sick is because the empathy piece, part of the compassion piece, is the ability to wish for the best or hope for the best for those he or she truly cares about. So, like, I wish nothing but the best for you. It seems as though I've never really learned how to do that, because instead I'm going, wow, this young female seems to have it all together. I hate to sound mean, but I kind of wishfully hope that maybe her mother was a complete witch, and maybe that her father died or something, because then that would make it feel like that would level the playing field a little bit. This disturbs people. But see, and I can try and hide these thoughts all I want, but remember, you can hide things all you want, but you're still going to believe what you believe. And sooner or later, how you really feel is going to slip out. You can't hide what you're feeling. You can't disguise how you feel about something forever. So, with that said, say, trying to think of someone. Say, you've got a girl A and girl B. And girl A seems very elegant, very etiquette, and she seems really like she's one of those people who is extremely popular. Subconsciously in the back of my mind, I'm almost wishfully hoping that that girl is one of the type who actually has a lot of problems going on in her family household situation, and she is popular out of repression for her dissatisfaction of her family life, so she's trying to compensate for her emptiness there by fulfilling her popularity pursuits. Or, of course, there's the inevitable, which is often the way things play out, that she comes from a very highly motivated, very inspirational, highly supportive household environment where she's got, siblings and cousins left and right, and aunts and uncles who are into legal and medical practice, and they're very highly successful family. Well, part of wishing for the best, wishing well for somebody or nothing but the best for a friend of yours, would be almost hoping for that. Subconsciously, I want to believe I don't want to believe that that's true. Because if that were true, that would mean that the girl A, had a lot more going for her than you. And I don't want that. I want an even playing field. But that's like when part of negative energy or negative influence includes the subconscious desire to bring other people down to your level. So, like, I subconsciously hope, maybe that girl's mother died. Maybe she's living with relatives or something, and blah, blah, blah. Something, because you don't want to believe that person you're thinking of is that much better than you are. And to proof of what an excellent, great guy my father is and how offended he gets by hearing that this is how I think. Because he's, no, you shouldn't be thinking about wishing bad things on other people just to bring them down to your level. You should be thinking, wishing well for other people because you care about them and you're able to step outside of yourself even when the going gets rough and think about the other person. What's the matter with you? Why aren't you able to do that? Do you have any human connection? I did not paraquote him verbatim, by the way. I just, it's not a quote, it's just kind of the way he's thinking. Like, why in the world would you have wishful desires that the situation is not as good or not very well at home for the person who's popular and seems perfect? Like there could be, and then person B is somebody, at work, and they have zillions of friends. They say that they left home, at an early age, right upon leaving for college, say age 18. When they talk about the parents, this girl B only mentions dad or my father. So, maybe your mom died or something. That's too bad. But that's mean to think that, right? But then subconsciously you're going, well, that levels the playing field a little. Well, but that's also a horrible thing to think. Or what about the more of the classic case? No, the mother was alive and well, but she was very, she drank, and she was an alcoholic who would drink and smoke, and she never really was there. That's a horrible thing to think. But if that's the way it was, then you wouldn't feel so inferior and think maybe she's from the better family and stuff. I'm not a supremacist, by the way. I'm just very jealousy prone. Now, I had a relative 3 generations before me who married this, he kind of came from the wrong side of the tracks, which is perfectly fine. I don't have any problems with that. I'm just stating the facts. He came from the wrong side of the tracks, and he ended up marrying this woman who was from a very affluent family. And he was so fit on hiding the fact that he didn't really have any real parents he knew. He wanted to keep it a secret. He didn't want people to know. He wanted to hide it from people. And, well, one day, though, when a cousin, I believe, of the girl, cousin of the woman, blurted something out about this ancestor of mine being adopted or something like that, he threw a fit. I mean, he was ripping, roaring mad because he was angry because he didn't want to, he wanted to be in denial of the fact that his wife had such more of a structured family. My family is structured, by the way. These are my fears. These are my doubts. I'm not living in a train station. I'm not living on the street. It's not like watching a movie. I've got parents that have held it together. I'd like to think of myself as somebody who's not rich and snooty because people don't like people like that. People like people better if they're not snobby. So then that's what I like to think. But I'm not snobby because usually snobs have better social skills. So I'm thinking, I like to say that I'm kind of bad social skills like Steve Urkel because that's cute, that's like harmless. And that's what I would want to believe. I would not want to admit to the fact that sometimes I can be a real jerk. But I don't want to admit that because I'm not proud of that. So instead I'll just say that I got Asperger's and that is sometimes I get kind of confused because it's easier for me to accept this. Because I don't want to have to accept all the unpleasant stuff. I want to try to think of some way as to avoiding actually having the undesired, outcome be, or undesired realization not be true. Nobody wants to admit that they're being inappropriate. They want to believe that there's some sort of form of corny, inspirational struggle going on. I want people to tell me you find it hard, or I know you have a hard time expressing exactly how you're feeling, or you think all these things, but you just never know how to communicate them the right way. Or I know your disability makes it difficult for you to. It's not all your fault. Asperger's syndrome is a very common thing, and I want people to tell me that, because if people tell me bull crap, I know people who have Asperger's syndrome who know how to say please and thank you, and they're very well behaved, and they're very involved and stuff. I don't want to think that, because then it implies that the inevitable is the case, that I have the capability to be fully integrated into society, but made a personal decision not to be. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear that it was the disability, because then I feel less at fault. So that's how it goes. Because it would mean worse for me if it turns out that it was the environment. Now, no, I admit to not being entirely, completely honest about my mom. For some reason, Mom will do these little subtle things to me that offend me. And it might be just being a little bit rude or inconsiderate, but I'll blow them out of proportion and create a mountain out of a molehill and think, like, Mom must question whether or not Mom loves me, which is something that comes much to the offense of her, because, she's thinking, how dare you, right? But nobody deserves to think those thoughts or wonder about that stuff, even though the answer is obviously more favorable than your worst doubts. You still like when Mom says, hey, Mark, why don't you go over there, or blah, blah, blah. Hey, Mark, can you get me some popcorn? Hey, what do you think of that very yummy iced tea? Tastes good, doesn't it? Yeah, well, what about it? Can you get me some? Gee, it'd be really nice if I had a straw. And I'm thinking, like, how dare she tell me to go somewhere else when she's with her friend, and then later she asks me to get her stuff. Although to her point of view, she's going, what the hell is his problem? I just want to be alone with my friend, and he explodes at me. And then I ask him to get things, and he is being defiant and disrespectful to his own mom. But in my mind, I'm thinking another thing. And so I think for some reason I subconsciously want to believe, there's a part of me that wishfully hopes that what my mother is doing to me is worse than what she's actually doing, because then it would place more responsibility in her lap. But that's mean. And I haven't the slightest clue why my mind does this. Why does my brain want to do that? Why would anyone want to wishfully hope that their own mother is actually doing meaner things than she's actually doing when she's only being mildly unthoughtful? It's almost like, because I'm jumping to conclusions that maybe my parents really are not as graceful as they ought to be. But that's like, how dare anybody think that? And you notice that this house I'm pacing around, who pays the bills? my parents. This is my folks' house. By the way, don't feel free to try to come here and do stuff to this house because our neighbors' houses are worth a lot more. I could care less about the worth of the house. I only care more about the size of it. This is what I mean, right? I think the essence is there's people starving in the world, and it bothers me. It disturbs me that I can get this anxious and this stressed out, even though I'm living in this type of nice environment. What could ever, even begin to transpire in my mind to get me to, what the hell could the issue be? What in the world is it? If I'm living in a house like this, I mean, what's my problem? Why am I so bothered? And why the hell would I want to hope that my mother's aggressions are worse than they actually are? And what the hell would make me wishfully hope that a seemingly problem-free, carefree, popular female actually has a mother who doubted her and who's lashing out against her parents, thus causing her popularity, versus coming from a nurturing, caring environment? Why would I want to wishfully hope, subconsciously hope against somebody coming from a nurturing environment? That's why would I want to think this way? So sometimes I've got my own personal doubts that I'm sick. That I'm ill. And I have this saying that 99.9% of the time, a person with mental illness is not even going to realize that they've got a problem. Again, 99.9% of the time, a person's not even going to realize that they've got any mental sickness. It's kind of like watching the movie A Beautiful Mind. Only those around the individual are going to realize. It's sort of like gradual onset hearing loss, where you're not going to know as much as maybe people who hang around you a lot, because they notice that you ask to have things repeated more. But you're not going to know because it snuck up on you very gradually. It's the same idea. I think I'm crazy. Who wants to think they're crazy? I am a product of the 1980s and 90s, so I try to remember that Seal song, which asserts that we're never going to survive unless we get a little crazy. Actually, a pet peeve of mine is when people confuse my disability, Asperger's syndrome, for some form of mental illness or social incompetence, where they question whether or not I can care for myself out in the world, or, should he be driving his car, or should he be trusted around sharp objects? I don't like that. I don't like it when people don't trust me. Because it's just, I know the saying might startle you a bit, but I don't pull Columbines. I don't go trigger happy. I'm not like that. Because I have seen too many of these incidents happen back in my day, to a point where I've had enough witnessing it, and I want to put it all behind me. Note that one of the Columbine shooters, Eric, I believe, his birthday was 3 days after mine. So, I felt like the Columbine sort of hit home for me, because everybody who got killed in that had birthdays within weeks of mine, within weeks of my birthday. So, it's scary. But, see, I don't want people to assume that I'm trigger happy, too. let's cut this video off here. I don't pull Columbines. That's a saying I have. I don't pull Columbines. I don't go trigger happy. I've seen it happen one too many times back in my day. And as a matter of fact, my birthday, my date of birth, April 6, 1981, is in fact 3 days apart from the birthday of Eric, I believe. I think Eric Harris was born on April 9th, 1981. And many of the casualties of the Columbine High School thing were within weeks of my date of birth. I'm doing my best to talk about this topic in a strictly informative fashion. For this social networking site and posting this video, the main intellectual point I want to make by mentioning Columbine is that, in addition to many of the other notorious high school rampages of the 90s, helped shape and mold me into making me ever so more determined to never flip out, never lose it, because it just made me more determined. It's like when somebody says, I'm never going to let you drive, or I'm never going to let you attend this college here. It makes you go, oh yeah, want to bet? And Mark, you're not going to New Hampshire anymore. Oh yeah, want to bet? Each and every time I would hear of a high school shooting back when I was a teenager in the mid and late 1990s, that made me all the more, just that much more determined to make a personal promise to myself that I would never go crazy, go loony, whatever, for whatever reason. I'll just suck everything up. Now, I would never do that. I mean, so it's kind of like, well, Mark, why would you even associate yourself with that? That's not the point. The point is that I found a way to internalize these events. I felt anger towards Eric, Klebold, and Harris, that's what I call them. Because the kids at Columbine, I thought, oh great, they're giving people like me a bad name, because now people who are different, who have disabilities, are going to get profiled against more. So I felt anger. I felt like you're making us look bad. That's like when I witness white guys being racist against black people. I get angry at the racist white folks because I go, you're giving black people all the more excuses to believe all of their pre-assumed notions about white people being racist. So that's the way I felt about Columbine. I thought they're helping feed into, I thought, oh my gosh, Klebold and Harris from Columbine were helping feed into the pre-assumed, what do you call it? Pre-assumed notions. I'll start over. Oh my gosh, I thought, oh my gosh, that Klebold and Harris from over in Columbine. Oh my gosh. This is what I thought. I thought, oh my gosh, that Klebold and Harris from over in Littleton, Colorado, Columbine. They helped feed into the pre-assumed notions about people with disabilities or who are different, or people who had been bullied. And I thought, I was bullied a lot, and I tend to get ultra-sensitive. Because it's like the movie Carrie, you know, somebody gets bullied and they're very sensitive, and they lash out. It's almost like the last person you ever would have expected to lash out like that was Carrie, because Carrie White was very painfully shy. I mean, if anything, you would have thought it'd be the other way around. You got to do everything in your power to protect her and so all that made me kind of angry because so I suppose I did not act out of compassion enough. I acted more out of, oh, you're destroying the reputation of people who are bullied or who are different. And so that was my reaction. I never liked people to. One big pet peeve of mine is people associating my disability with mental illness or mental incapabilities, such as mental I forget if mental handicap or mental retardation is the politically correct. Mental challenges, that's the one. Okay, so people could easily mistake or confuse Asperger's syndrome with mental challenges or mental illness, specifically those who have very limited or no knowledge whatsoever about what Asperger's is. Well, that's a pet peeve of mine, such as when people, write put a Mark Smith sticker on all my belongings, or ask me if I know how to drive. And I don't want to be like a member of those Dr. Magneto's Brotherhood of Mutants and allow my disability to turn me overly bitter. Like I'm the self-righteous, avenging, bitter Aspie who's out to lash out at all non-Aspies and stuff like that. I want to be I don't want to be that. I don't want to be the self-avenging Aspie who's very bitter and out to get his revenge on all people who do not have Asperger's. I just want to be people to treat me like I've got a brain, but people to also give me the benefit of the doubt that I'm capable of human connection. And when they see me lacking in that, and they see me being overly nervy and stuff, try to help me. Don't just get freaked out by me or be like, don't ever try to contact me ever again. People say I'm very high-strung and very high energy. Yes, because I'm in the position where I always have to be proving myself every second. People in very closely knit friendship situations or life situations where people feel predestined to believe in them, or they're treat them as a credible source, they don't have to try. It's like sort of toward the end of the movie Mean Girls. Mean Girls movie with Lindsay Lohan. Remember how toward the end of the movie Mean Girls, starring Lindsay Lohan, when she said before school used to feel like a shark tank, now I can just float. I never had that experience. I'm always that desperate guy at the door who's begging for security not to be hasty with them. That was a figure of speech, by the way. Because people don't really believe in me very much. And so I'm always desperate in everything. It makes me jealous when I witness people who are not so desperate. They just get to float. And it seems like that's what's called empathy. When people, if anything were to happen to that very popular person you're talking about, it would be just like that scene in the Super Nintendo game, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, or the Nintendo 64 game, Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, where if Link attacks the chicken and whacks it enough times with his sword, a whole ton of other chickens will come out and attack Link until he gets inside or leaves the board or whatever and loads into the next screen. But I always have doubt personal doubt that nobody will come to my rescue if anybody were to do something to me. It's like I'm all alone, like in that scene in the movie is The Village, where the quote-unquote village idiot got in this costume, outfit, as one of the creatures, and attacks Ivy Walker, or whatever her name was, and she was all alone. The camera kept panning upward. I mean, it was just shown she had nobody to help her. And I feel like too many times that's what I'm like, is that I'm a loner. And many of those notorious school shooters of the 90s were also loners. So I would get angry because I would get paranoid that whenever some event like that would occur, I was going to have to, I'd get profiled against. Even though it's ridiculous. I'd never do something like that. But it's part of the whole paranoia thing. When people don't know you as well, and you are braving the shark tank, and you are not one of the ones who gets to float, you know, you have to brave the tank, people are going to always assume that you mean the exact opposite of what you assert. So, like, I assert if I go assure people I would never turn crazy, they'd think, now, and 1 week from now, he'll be the craziest son of a gun alive. Right, they're not going to believe me. They're going to assume that I actually, my desperation to prove the point is all the proof they need or the evidence they got to hear to assure that I, in fact, mean the very opposite of what I'm asserting, if that makes any sense. And so, oh, Angela, we know you would never do anything like that. Mark's, he's got to get some help. He's losing it. Exactly. I always feel paranoid. It's like the movie Black Swan. Right. It's like I'm always have to be proving that I am a good guy. Well, how would I feel if everybody knew? If I didn't have to prove it to anyone? How would that make me feel? Oh, man, how badly I want that. But I don't know how much I ever got to experience it. But, yeah, I mean, what if people knew? What if, they knew what your intentions were? They believed you. Certain topics, there's no delicate way to bring them up. I don't know, and I don't know why I never feel like just talking about the weather. As that's an expression, by the way. You know, the normal things, the lighter things. It's just for some reason, it never occurs to me to talk about the lighter things. I always have to talk about the heavy stuff. And there's a part of me that wants to believe that all the stuff I'm saying is very neat. Maybe if I relax more, it'd be better. Basically, what did I think of the movie Carrie? There's no easy way to go about it. This is a social networking site, but intellectually, I'll say a few things about my reaction. Well, first off, I knew it was just a movie. I knew it was just fake. I think that a lot of the things, stuff that Carrie White's mother, Margaret, could get away with in the movie, she could never get away with in real life without causing a local uproar amongst all the local concerned neighbors who would be always grilling Margaret White on her very authoritarian, religious, fundamental ways. It's just like in movies, like, for instance, Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy, or, Anchorman, the hidden movie that went straight to DVD. Well, Ron Burgundy and a lot of his buddies or colleagues or associates got away with hell. I mean, with anything under the sun, and being extremely inappropriate around Christina Applegate's character. I can't remember what she was called in that. Veronica Corningstone. We know that those, let's face it, we know that the anchorman Ron Burgundy and his pals are never going to hold down their job if they treat women like that in real life. It's just a movie. I thought that Carrie, the whole prom destruction scene, let's not forget that Carrie was a novel by Stephen King. I mean, no doubt about it, those things are creepy. I mean, I definitely am not a horror person for certain. I call it an October movie. It's fake. It's no less fake or make-believe than Cujo or Friday the 13th or Pet Sematary. It's not real. It's fake. Again, Carrie, it's almost like Cujo, the demonic dog, or, Cujo, the demonic dog, or Pet Sematary. That's all Carrie is. I mean, it's fake. I think it's sci-fi, too, when you think of it. That's all it is. It's because it's supernatural, it's sci-fi, it's good for October, and we know, and the thing with Stephen King is he loves to make things get very uneasy, like things spiraling out of control to an extent that's not normal, such as Carrie White's deteriorating relationship with her mother Margaret. That would never fly in real life. And the whole prom destruction scene, that's never going to happen. That's fake. But, I mean, I just think that it's a Stephen King story. That's all it is. Or either that or a crummy, sucky sci-fi movie. Yeah. But I like the part about how it focuses on teasing and how it can impact somebody. What I liked most about Carrie was that main focus was very subtle and non-highlighted, yet presence. It was a high presence of thoughtless, careless, inconsiderate behavior by Carrie White's classmates, particularly Chris Hargensen and Norma. I'm talking about the 1976 version. Is that they just kind of accepted that as if it was there, it was like tolerated. But they let things go too much, and they spiral out of control because people never took the time to try and solve the problem. And there's no light way to go about talking about that movie. It's just, you mention it, and you can try to be as delicate and as politically correct as possible. But even the very mention of certain words like Columbine or Carrie, there's just no way that you can talk about it without being suspended, And that bothers me, because I like to be open and just be able to talk and not have to worry that somebody's going to tap me on the shoulder from behind me and be like, hey, you need to cut it out. Seriously. I like it when people, it's just natural, that's all it is. I don't like it when people are too scared to mention something. It's just a fact of life. But that's the way it is. People frighten easily. And I admit having a close to average IQ makes me among the people who don't like things they're not used to. That's why being socially acceptable is so important, I guess. I admit to having a close to average IQ. Yes, I had my IQ tested. It's nothing all that glamorous. I mean, it's normal. It's, in the lower 100s. Many people believe dragging that IQ down is my extreme lack in aptitude for the part of my brain, of anyone's brain, that's necessary to allow them to observe and learn by observing various social mannerisms. It's the same part of your brain, as I like to believe, by the way, that you would use to, like, for instance, if you're standing in a narrow corridor and there may be people behind you whose ability to pass through the corridor depends on your ability to move out of their way. If nobody were to ever tap me on the shoulder or something and be like, people are trying to get through, the thought would never ever occur to me to move out of the way. Ever. And people could blame that on bad parenting. But I met one autistic person who would never eat or never drink or never do anything for herself unless somebody addressed her by her name and told her to do that. Like, hey, drink, or eat your sandwich. It's self-advocating. That same part of your brain you need for self-advocating is that part of your brain that gives you that natural inclination to, look people in the eye as you speak to them, or pick up your knife in one hand and your fork in the other and chop your food up the right way, or know the right speaking volume, or know how to be receptive and compassionate to people and stuff. It's just a part of your brain that, like, certain things your mommy and daddy ain't going to give you charm school lessons. I don't believe in charm school any more than how I don't believe in psychiatrists, but I'm just saying. Mommy and daddy ain't going to tell you how to be polite. I mean, mommy and daddy ain't going to be, hey, this is how you need to behave. They're going to be, leave it up to the individual to watch people and learn how to act and behave socially appropriate. It's because there's a part of your brain that does it, just like there's a part of your brain you use for hand-eye coordination and for knowing how to read and write, like how dyslexics have difficulty with the part of their brain that interprets language. And so there's a part of your brain, think of it almost as dyslexia for the ability to communicate non-verbally. The extreme lack in IQ or aptitude in that part of your brain. Many people, many of the naysayers believe that's all BS. That's all bull crap. And the person is just coming up with a lot of these false and phony, falsified mental health jargon terms to generate excuses as to why their behavior is not where it ought to be. I am trying to self-train myself to give good eye contact. Ready to turn 30 soon. Eye contact is still something I struggle with. Now, there are many things I want to reassure myself with, such as, just as you know how autistics are well known for disliking being touched or hugged or whatnot? Well, it's kind of like, in a similar way, Asperger's syndrome, that same issue of feeling overly nervous or uneasy or unrested at the thought of connecting too much applies to that idea of being empathetic. We get scared out of our mind. It's kind of like looking someone in the eye almost gives me the same feeling as, or having to hug them. I feel almost like I forgot if I remembered to back up my hard drive, and if I didn't remember, I lost all my data. But I can't quite remember if I forgot or something. It's almost like those Home Alone movies where the mother has this feeling she forgot something. It's just this inability to relax and feel like I always feel like there's something I can't trust. And I have issues where I have a really hard time trusting people. Like, I just don't know if I can believe this person. And I wonder if that can contribute to the lack of empathetic response I get from people whenever I'm down, whenever I'm in trouble. You know, like, do I feel like one of those hens from that Super Nintendo Zelda game, or from that Nintendo 64 Ocarina of Time, where if Link attacks a chicken and hits it with enough swings of his sword, a bunch of chickens are going to come and attack him? Or do I feel more like that Ivy Walker character felt like, walking around in the woods when she was suddenly attacked by the local villager who dressed up in that outfit? She was all alone. She had to, they kept panning the camera upward at the treetops. Like, that was just showing she was alone, she was isolated, she didn't have anyone to help her. I always seem to internalize, like I just said now, anyone to help me. I'm still thinking about me a lot. And a part of me wonders if that's how I've been raised to think. I would want to believe really bad that it was the Asperger's syndrome, because that would take me beyond the inevitable fact that maybe I've been instilled these thoughtless ways of thinking. I don't want to feel that way. I mean, it's just that feeling. It's almost like that relative from my great-grandparents' generation who always wanted to keep it a secret that he was adopted, because the woman he married had a really affluent, well-off family. And he was so ashamed, he didn't want to admit it. He never really came to terms because he didn't want to admit it. He just wanted to tell himself any possible tale that he would want to hear. It's like you want people to tell you what you want to hear, not what the facts are. So that's what happened. I mean, obviously, I want to believe my parents are nice, and I have no doubt in my mind they are. And I also have no doubt in my mind that I sound like a completely ungrateful brat when I assume that they're not. It's just a question of what could have caused my self-centered, self-absorbed personality, which always causes me to be isolated. Could it be part of the disability, or could it be some inevitable truth that I don't want to admit to? Oh, and you know what? Just now I realized there's that laundry thing there. I wonder if there's any laundry upstairs. See, that's the thing. If you are going to attack your own parents' credibility under the same roof as them, under their own roof, they're going to attack back and be like, how much have you done around here? And, they might start lusting for a son who's a little bit more lives up to their image. So, but what happens when you start losing sight of things and you're only thinking reflecting in terms of how you can be the most perfect family, as opposed to just worrying about yourself. Like Dad says, you only need to worry about you. And people will see that and respect that, and you'll make more friends that way. You need to stop comparing yourself to others. Yet, comparing myself to others is what I continue to do. And that's what happens to me. I keep on, saying, that you're in a public place and you see, or you're even at college or anywhere you can think of, and you see an attractive young female, although you're completely thinking in a non-sex way. You're thinking entirely, such as the way that people with Asperger's syndrome tend to get more fixated with parts of objects rather than people. So objects and parts of them. So like I might only be thinking about, say, I might focus on, well, that particular girl, say she's one who's quote unquote way attractive. All I can really think about is like how to pronounce her name, or like that particular birthmark she might have on one side of her face, or what her hair looks like, or what her shirt looks like. I'm not thinking about what some of the somewhat less appropriate guys are probably thinking about, like, oh yeah, blah blah blah. No, I'm thinking more about like the way her hair happens to look, what her eye color is. Like I get too bogged down by the minor details, to so much so that I lose track of how pretty do you think she is, because I get so bogged down by like the exact way she looks. But I always place an assumption that chances are very likely that maybe she comes from a household that's less dysfunctional. If somebody would walk up to me and be like, Mark, like they might even be laughing it off, like, because they'd find humor in the fact that I would actually be so nervy. It's almost like I'm being nervy or not very kind because I got all of these unresolved personal insecurity issues and issues of resent and inferiority complexes. And I have never really gotten to the bottom of any of these intense feelings. And I just I can try to shut up, but the feelings keep persisting, causing me to be ever more motivated to insist that I need help, because I'm like, I can't do this. I got all these unsettled thoughts in my mind that keep coming back for vengeance, and they keep coming back to bother me, and I can't make them go away. Because it's like if you wonder something, but people deprive you of the right to wonder, you're going to find a way. It's like some guy says, man tells me, Mark, look at me, you're not going back to New Hampshire again. Or, again, there will be no more New Hampshire trips for you. I'd be going, oh yeah? Want to bet? I cannot simply sit back and be like, oh yeah, well, alright, that's fine. No, I'm not going to listen. I'm not going to adhere. That means, like, someone tells you not to do something, and you just want to do it anyways. But almost it gets to the point where with the whole, I'm not saying I live around this, but suppose you got the whole strict authoritarian type of rule where they're watching your every move, and every time you're driving in your car and you come to a stop sign or a traffic light turn red or changing to orange, yellow, and then eventually to go to red, you could almost picture a probationary officer or a parole officer shadowing your car, making sure that you stop at every light. And so you're forcing fake empathy because, I have to abide by the rules or otherwise I'm in trouble. But meanwhile, in the back of your mind is melting resistance. You would gladly disobey the rules the soonest opportunity you have, because although you're abiding by the rules, you're pissed because you got no say. And my father is a product of, the 1960s. He spent most of his prime in the 1960s. He said in the 60s, people realized that they were sending people off to Vietnam, and they were pressuring them into feeling like it's the rightful patriotic duty of every young man in the United States to serve their country and go off to fight. But then the thing that many of non-veterans faced was that Vietnam veterans, they felt like they were almost betrayed. And they felt like if only they had a little more rebellious spunk or flair, maybe they would have gotten what they wanted more. But see, if you get that feeling where there's that probation, you feel like you're on a probationary trial period and your behavior is being watched very closely. And be like, oh yeah, I always think about other people. Yeah, certainly. And the second the person leaves, you look around the room and you're like, God, I can't stand that guy. But what if somebody was to go, oh, I know you'd never do something like that. And you'd feel bad to violate that man's trust or a woman's trust. If, she asserted that, she truly knows and trusts that you'd never do something like that. And they have faith in you and they believe in you. You're going to be like, suddenly that's going to knock the wind right out of your sails and you're not going to want to rebel anymore. Suddenly the flair or the strong urge to break a little rule here and there goes away or subsides because now they're not just ordering you around like a dog. By the way, dogs are cute, I'm just saying. They're relating to you as a person. They say oh, light's turning red, you have to stop now. Oh, you're at a stop sign, stop. You better stop now. Or they'll just take for granted that you'll stop because they have faith in you. I feel like not enough people believe in me. It's just, nobody says it, but the feeling is there. And if you just always are waiting and lingering for the first chance that you get to accuse somebody of not doing the dishes, or not vacuuming, or not doing the laundry, and punishing them retrospectively for, say, for the past year and a half, or 1.5 years, or 2 or 3 years, you would ignore certain duties, assuming someone else would do it, household chores, and the person had a problem with you ignoring those duties, but never would communicate with you until suddenly, for the past 3 years, I never saw you even try to help me do this. And nobody ever would tell me. You'd be like, you expect me to tell you, blah, 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 blah. And then I feel embarrassed because I wonder if those accusations have anything to do with the accusations I placed against Mom and Dad when I was desperately seeking truth. So, that's what happens. Versus what if instead of accusing me of doing something I didn't want them to do, or not doing something that they wished I could have done, but instead asking me about how my time was and what I was up to. No, they have no concern to ask. And so it's people only thinking about how your actions or lack of them thereof impact their lives. And that's what happens is I don't want to make anyone out to look like meanies, but I'm just saying.